of pin codes in India. So whenever we are doing an Amazon delivery, the delivery agent can help you load cash into your wallet, and you can pay subsequently digitally for all your orders, whether on shopping, paying bills, ordering food, buying a ticket, and so on. And so that's at one end of the spectrum, which is the cash loading customer. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, if you're somebody who's already active on a credit card and wants to get more out of your credit card, we have a credit card product which serves that segment as well, which gives you the maximum unlimited rewards that you can get, no strings attached. And then somewhere in the middle, we talked about how credit is an unsolved problem in India. And Amazon particularly has a big role to play in terms of understanding customer behaviors and figuring out who to give how much credit to. And so there we have a product called Amazon Pay Later, which allows customers to buy now and pay next month, again for a variety of their consumption needs, ranging from shopping to payments to more. And then, as all of this transformation is happening, UPI is the most democratic way any customer can pay. There is some 800 million bank accounts in India. Almost all of them can just link to the Amazon app using UPI and start paying for anything. So I think the role that Amazon can play in terms of democratizing payments and making the society cashless is immense. And that's just on the consumer side. When you then look at on the business side, we have the our QR code program, which has now reached about 5 million merchants. So Amazon Pay can be accepted directly at 5 million merchants through our QR code. And that with that, we have gone through the smallest of smallest business, ranging from a kirana to a food stall and so on, all the way to the other end where we are serving organized retail chains across the country, that whether it be a More or a Shopper Stop, and several more of those, Cafe Coffee Day and so on, all the way to serving online merchants, whether you want to order food delivery or book a movie ticket or book a travel ticket or book a cab ride. So you can accept Amazon Pay now democratically across all merchant segments as well. So I think our emphasis, Minari, has been on not just taking one product to one segment, but really how do you create the right bespoke products that can serve customers and merchants in the right segments.
Raghav, we spoke about how we are enabling small businesses to scale up and really making a lot of lives easier for a lot of our customers in different ways. And then we spoke about, this whole very inclusive financial growth, or even overall, bringing in inclusive growth. So, so this all this exciting, work that's happening with technology and innovation and customer obsession. For all the people who are listening in here, Raghav, uh, what would you have, as a suggestion or advice for anyone who wants to aspire to become a part of this journey?
So I would say, Minari, that if you're a engineering or a management student today, you're actually extremely lucky. First of all, each of you would be a digital native, which means that people would have been born around the millennium. So you grew up with the internet around you, and technology and digital technology is something which each of you is fully familiar with. Second, I think you're fortunate because you're entering the workforce at a time when the global pandemic has actually acted like some kind of a global laboratory and shown what the future can look like if everyone, all customers and businesses were to actually embrace digital technology. In fact, digital technology is really the vector on which the world is fast reinventing itself into the future. And people who are entering the workforce today will have the opportunity to be part of it. Within Amazon, we offer a career for builders. Jeff shareholder letters talks about creating a culture of builders where people are curious, they like to invent, they start with a fresh beginner's mentality, they're not afraid of failure. And that's something that when we blend with customer obsession and an ability to take risks, we will really create a workforce of people who will invent the future and transform, as I said earlier, India into something which is very different from what it is today in terms of being an economic powerhouse. Even much of what we have built at Amazon, Minari, has been from listening to customers, asking them what they want, and listening carefully, and then figuring out a plan to make it very thoughtfully and quickly. And some of our biggest needle moving inventions have actually come from the products customers did not really know how to ask for, and we then invented on their behalf. So, for students of today who are aspiring to be part of this journey, I would actually say the excitement is just beginning. We are just on day one. And Amazon is really the place to be in as we build the future starting right now.
Thanks, Raghav. Puneet, you spoke earlier about this really diverse, exciting workplace that is one of your big priorities as you help and Indian companies go digital. But tell me a little more about how you're pivoting your talent strategy to really bring that about, and which all the people who are listening to would be interested in.
So, Nari, I'll go back to what you started the conversation with, right? Which is, I think we all believe that this is going to be India's century. We obviously have work to do, but I think what we're now starting to see in India is a bit of what we call the perfect storm of digitization, right? It's almost like a new digitally enabled India is starting to emerge. And there are a couple of reasons why this is coming together in the right way for India. First is the India stack, which is the three digital infrastructure highways that have been built. And Mahendra spoke about the bank accounts. But if you look at Aadhaar, right, everybody knows about Aadhaar, but that allows Indians today to open a bank account in less than a minute. And then the second marker of confidence on this is, as AWS from our vantage point, we're now seeing businesses in India realize the value of technology like they've never done, and they're moving at a speed that's again something that at least I haven't seen before. Right? This crisis was almost like a dress rehearsal for the new world, and it has taught us many things. But the one lesson that really stands out for me is the need for agility, right? The need to adapt quickly to uncertainty because we're entering a time which is more uncertain and more dynamic, and that's where technology and cloud have a massive role to play. I mean, cloud changes everything when it comes to agility, and the role of technology and cloud in the last couple of years has changed from being an enabler to being at the core of businesses and innovation, which is really exciting. And then, as AWS and Amazon, we have a significant role to play. As Raghav said, change lives and livelihood of citizens and businesses in India. And we're going to do this by simplifying technology, by democratizing technology for Indian businesses. And in technology, there's nothing more elegant than simplicity, right? And we spoke about SMBs earlier. Uh, I've always believed the S in the SMB stands for simple, and we need to really simplify and democratize technology to get a larger part of India to access that technology. And we're starting to see that happen today, right? I'll give you an example. Any of us today sitting in a Starbucks or even a cyber cafe in Patna can access as much compute, storage, database, analytics as large corporations with millions of dollars of budgets and armies of people used to be able to do, right? And imagine the unlock for us if we can get 1.3 billion Indians to access this technology. So that's what we got to do. We got to simplify technology. We got to make it accessible for a billion Indians. And as I said earlier, right, it's about building the best technology team. And Raghav said this, right, which is if you're today an engineer, if you're somebody who's coming out of college, you are already a digital native, so you've got an advantage. But we're working really hard to bring the best builders into AWS who can then solve the toughest problems for our customers. And then we're also focusing a lot on building their skills and capabilities so that they can solve the toughest problems and really deliver impact and make us the most customer obsessed company in India.
Mahendra, what would you say? I mean, both Raghav and Puneet referenced a lot of the engineering and the tech piece, but we also have a lot of management students and a lot of other students. What would be your words of advice to all these people listening in today?
Yeah. So I think on this one, I probably have a bit of a unique perspective. So I joined Amazon way back when in 2005 as an intern. And then after business school, I decided to do a few other things. And then I rejoined again in 2009 as a product manager. Um, and I can tell you that over the last 12 years, I've never really left my job title as an intern. There's always something new to learn. I've been fortunate enough to be a part of businesses which at Amazon at that time had not been tried before, were very new. So before payments, I did something called Amazon Home Services, where I was trying to figure out how to put air conditioners and washing machines in people's homes. And before that, I built something called Jungli.com, which was on the mission of organizing selection across large unorganized small and medium sized businesses at Amazon. So I feel what Amazon offers you, and before that, as an intern, I was working on something called Web Store, and then after that, fulfillment by Amazon. So what Amazon first of all offers you is a very wide canvas of opportunities across a variety of businesses. And the businesses I talked about that I have worked on are only on the consumer and the seller side. They don't even get to devices and AWS and content and many other things that we are into. So I think it's a world of opportunities by itself. So if you're somebody who's looking for a very long, fruitful, exciting career where you're learning all the time, I feel it's a really great place to be. And Amazon does encourage people to try out new things coming in. So that's awesome. The one common thread, though, across all these things that I feel is very exciting. I mean, we have heard this term customer obsession, but Amazon is an organization, even at its current scale. Back when I joined as an intern, we were 2,000 people. When I joined full time, we were 5,000 people. Now we are a million people. The things that have stayed constant are our leadership principles. And our first leadership principle is customer obsession. And I think that is true whether you're in AWS, that is true whether you're in consumer, that is true whether you're in payments, devices, what have you. And I think that would be my one sort of piece of advice, regardless of whether you're an engineer or a management graduate or even a lateral hire, is just putting the customer at the center of all your decisions. I think it's an invaluable skill and lesson to have.
Nicely said, Mahendra. And with that, we come to the end of this panel discussion. I want to just thank all of our panelists, Raghav Rao, Puneet Chandok, and Mahendra Nerurkar, for all these insights into what's making Amazon this exciting, thriving workplace where we are really, making such a difference with technology and innovation, but really making a difference to the lives of our customers in so many small and medium-sized businesses and really across so many different industries and people. Um, I hope you all found this really interesting. I want to thank all of you who've joined in today to be a part of this session with us. But as you know, we have a lot more in store as a part of the Career Day. Stay tuned. Have a good day.
Thanks everyone for sharing such valuable insights into some of Amazon's fastest growing businesses in India and how these are bringing about a lasting positive impact on small businesses in the country and overall in India's digital transformation. Coming up next, we will have you meet one of our fellow Amazonians through a short video and learn what has kept her motivated for the last 13 years at Amazon.
With 20 plus years of experience in the industry, I've spent the last 13 years at Amazon. Last few years, I've been leading a tech organization which is focused on India customer reach and engagement. We are looking to build technology solutions to solve for barriers that these emerging customers are facing, introduce interaction patterns like videos to help customers comprehend the content on our website. Also make these experiences a lot more fun and engaging for these customers by introducing gaming elements into the customer experience. I've spent a lot of my professional life at Amazon, so obviously I really enjoy working here. The leadership principles of Amazon are at the core of everything that we do. The fact that you get to work with these brilliantly sharp, highly motivated colleagues that helps you constantly learn and grow. There will always be peaks and troughs between your personal and professional commitments. What is most important is to prioritize what is important at what point in time. Set the right expectations. Hold yourself in high esteem. Be proud of who you are. Others treat you the way you treat and represent yourself. Don't be afraid of challenges and failures. Be a strong woman. We may need coffee, we may need a good cry, we may need a day in bed, but we will always come back stronger.
Wow, interesting. By the way, do you know Amazon's Hyderabad campus is our first owned office building outside US and the single largest building in terms of area for Amazon globally. Amazon is special because of the smart, passionate employees obsessing over customers and innovating on their behalf every single day. From our Seattle headquarters to the hundreds of thousands employees in our offices and customer fulfillment centers across the globe. We are proud of the vast array of careers available here, from entry-level positions across our operations network to customer solutions managers to engineers working on next-generation Amazon products. Up next, we offer you a deep dive on the Amazon interview process, and we believe this will give all the aspiring professionals a clear idea of what to expect. Let's hear it from Samir and Luli.
Hello, my name is Luli Chaluleo, and I'm the Director of Talent Acquisition for Worldwide Operations.
And I'm Zamir Rayani, and I am a Principal Recruiter for the Devices and Services Organization.
We are so excited to join you today on Career Day. As many of you have probably heard, Amazon has a peculiar interviewing process. So we want to spend some time today just talking through that process and talking about interviewing in general. All right, let's dive in. So, Zamir, you make it past the phone screen or the assessment, and you're invited to come, on site. But right now, obviously, a lot of things are virtual. But you're here for an interview. What should you prepare for? What should you expect?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting times, and I would say that the preparation has not changed too much since the pandemic. Some of the things are similar, right? So the basics: get your resume, make sure that thing is in tip-top shape, right? No typos, make sure it reflects your current experience. It talks about the things that you've delivered, right? It kind of covers the basics. The bigger part, I think, and the more important piece, and what you alluded to earlier, which is what makes us peculiar, is the leadership principles, right? That's something that's super, super important for the way we interview at Amazon. And I would say it probably makes a lot of sense to spend a good amount of time thinking about your own experience, right? Your professional experience, and maybe writing down 1 or 2 examples from your experience that relate to each of these leadership principles, right? And this isn't like a script, something you're just going to read off of. But what it is, it kind of gets your mind, it kind of frames things, right? And gets you into that mindset of like, hey, these things are really important to the company. And it helps educate you and kind of inform you as to what the culture will be like, as well as how your specific kind of background and experiences may actually relate to that and may kind of play into that, right? I'm sure, I guess a question for you might be, when you were interviewing 9-ish years ago, right? What did you do to prepare, right? Was it different than what you would recommend someone doing now, for example?
Yeah, I'm not sure how I got the job, Samir. But one thing that I did do to prepare was to learn a lot about Amazon. So I did go onto the website and just learn about all the different things that we were doing. I mean, 9 years ago, we weren't in as many businesses, but I did make it a point to try to learn about all the different businesses that Amazon did have. At the time, I'm not sure that my recruiter told me about the leadership principles or even STAR interviewing, which we'll get to. So I was very surprised on site that day, and honestly had felt a little underprepared. But I did notice that they were interviewing me for specific things, and I now know that those are the leadership principles. But why? If you could explain to everybody today, why does Amazon interview against those leadership principles?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that makes us peculiar as compared to a lot of other companies is a lot of companies do have tenets or things that, pillars of the company, things that they say, we stand for. And sometimes those are things that do impact the culture, but sometimes they don't. They're just kind of things that are inscribed on a wall, for example, right? And you may look at them every now and then. The difference is in our environment with this company, with Amazon specifically, is these are kind of part and parcel to everything that we do, right? So in the context of the interview, we definitely use them to, figure out, hey, is this person going to be a good fit within this company, right? Do we want to hire this person? But well beyond that, right, these leadership principles are used in everyday business decisions, right? We use them when we're going through reviews for talent. We use them across the board, right? When we think about new products and services, for example, right, we're thinking about these leadership principles, right? Are we starting with the customer and working backwards, right? Are we showing that true customer obsession? Right? Super, super important. So I think that's the difference, right? It's one of those things where it will be useful for your interview, but as you begin your Amazon journey, it will be useful well beyond, right, just that initial interview, and it'll be useful for you through your entire kind of journey with this company. So really good to kind of familiarize yourself with them and get comfortable talking about them. Not about memorization, right? We're not going to say, interview question 1, recite all of them, right? Nobody's going to ask you to do that. But really, it will really kind of set sort of the tone of what your experience will be like at the company, because they are so foundational, but as well as sort of like elemental to our entire kind of way we do business and how we kind of run this company. So super important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, having worked here so long, even now in my day-to-day, I'm constantly anchoring myself in the leadership principles and making sure that I'm thinking about them when making decisions. And so we're really interviewing people and trying to understand how they can deploy those leadership principles in their day-to-day. Yeah.
It's funny that you say that too, because it reminds me of like, we definitely use them in business, but sometimes I find myself using them at home as well, right? I'm like, you know what, that person didn't really earn my trust by doing this and that, or, oh, I had such a great experience at the restaurant, the customer obsession was like next level, right? And it starts to kind of permeate in some other parts, and then I try to cut myself, like, oh, that's really funny, right? I mean, it's really becomes part of like the culture and the way you think.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, 100%. I think my kids probably know some of the leadership principles.
I think my dog definitely knows some.
Your dog.
For sure.
That's great. The type of interviewing that we do at Amazon is called behavioral-based interviewing. Can you explain, like, what does that really mean? What's a behavioral-based interview?
Yeah, so we like to ask a lot of questions that kind of talk about, like, give me an example of when you did this, or tell me about a time when this happened, right? And these are sort of like intros to, hey, we want to learn about what you did in a specific situation or a specific position that you were in, right? And the idea being that we kind of believe that, past behaviors are good indicators of like future behaviors as well. And so we ask a lot of those behavioral-based questions as a result. So what you won't see, or what you shouldn't see typically with us, is how many pennies will it take to fill this room, for example, right? We don't ask like trick questions.
Yeah.
We stay away from those. We're really interested in specifics about, hey, what types of situations have you been in, right? What were the stakes? How did you measure it, right? What did you learn in that experience, right? Lots of different questions around kind of understanding what you did, why you did it, how you did it, right? If you reflect on that experience, what would you do differently? I think that one of the key things, instead of just the what, is I would say the how and the why.
Yeah.
Because what one person does in a situation may be very unique or specific to that particular situation, but if you can sort of understand their mindset, the thinking behind why they did something or how they sort of undertook it, right? Did they keep people advised what was going on, right? Did they kind of look around corners and anticipate maybe some problems that could arise if something wasn't handled? Did they have good sort of mitigating strategies in place? If we can understand the way someone's mind works, that's very exciting, because then you can apply that to a bunch of different scenarios, right, that are just beyond the what of one particular situation. So when we ask these behavioral sort of questions, that's what we're interested in understanding, is how one's mind works, how you process it, sort of how do you work your way through these situations, right? And that's really interesting, and that's really fun to do, honestly. Like,
Yeah.
I love interviewing because I'm just curious about people and sort of what they do and why and how. But it's really interesting to learn about the way people's minds work, because it's very different for many people, and I love that. I just think that you could put 10 different people in the same situation, and you might get 10 different paths to the same outcome. That's awesome, or different outcomes as well. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, I love interviewing as well. I think together we've done thousands of interviews for Amazon, and then throughout our careers. Now, just a tactical advice for behavioral-based interviewing is to practice the STAR method. So situation, task, action, and result. So all the different things that you just kind of chatted about. But anything else that you think we should highlight on the STAR method? I think the part that you talked about on why you did something, how you weighed different options and why you chose the one is the one that comes to mind for me. But, in the STAR method, what's something that pops for you?
It's interesting. The STAR method is one of those things where I don't like to think of it as a prescriptive approach, right? Like, we don't expect our candidates to say, here was the situation, here was the task, here was the action, here was the result, right? It's sort of something to get one in the mindset of, hey, as I'm thinking about talking about my experience, at some point, be sure to kind of cover off each of those different areas, right? We're definitely interested in sort of the anecdotes and, and like the results and the data and things like that. But what I would say is it's less important about the structure and more important about kind of the actual content, right? So we may jump around a little bit, but what's really important, I would say, when you ask like of that piece, is the results are really interesting to us, right? We really like to measure whenever possible. And we understand that while not every example can be quantified, right? Meaning you didn't necessarily have a before and an after and a specific metric. If that is available, right? We love a really good sort of qualitative or quantitative data point to kind of bolster a great story, right? Of course, we hope for positive outcomes, but that doesn't always happen, right? Meaning a product may fail at some point, right? Look at the Fire Phone, right? I mean, that was a pretty big failure. We learned a ton from that.
I had one.
And you had one, great.
I had one
One of the few
absolutely.
and proud, right?
Yeah.
So there were good things
Yeah.
in that failure, right? And we learned a ton that we have since applied. So some of it is like with the result, it's the reflection as well. It's like, okay, what data do you have to show it was successful? How do you know it's successful? And if it wasn't, let's be introspective. Let's think about looking backwards. What could we have done maybe to get to a different outcome? Or how did we take what we learned there and apply it in a future project, right? Or project, something like that. So STAR is great, but remember, it's not a prescriptive thing. Just be thinking about that in your mind. It's like, I'd love to cover off all those dimensions of any particular story that I'm talking about. And again, think about data too. We're very data driven here, but we recognize that, it's not always available. But if it is, we'd love to know what story that data is telling us as well.
Yeah. The one thing is, though, I think the situation, I think about that a lot. Right now, we have a lot of people looking for jobs, and perhaps they're looking for jobs in industries that are different than the one that they're in. And so I think one piece of advice would be to really make sure you're not too specific about the situation. You might be interviewing with somebody who doesn't know anything about your industry. So I tend to do that a lot. I've been with Amazon for 9 years, and I may talk in a way that is so specific to Amazon that if you're giving an example, it might be hard to follow if you aren't working at Amazon. So my rule of thumb is to explain something to my sister who's an ER nurse. And if she can understand the situation and the whole example, then I think that is a good way to frame a response. Because I know when I've interviewed folks, sometimes I spend more time trying to understand that situation because I'm from a different industry. And so just finding a good balance of how to explain the situation in front of you to somebody who may not know anything about the industry that you're coming from, I think is a good tip.
Yeah, that's great. I often tell people the candidates that I'm talking to are mostly smarter than I am and work in a lot of different areas. And so I say the same thing. I say, explain it to me like I'm a 5-year-old and assume I know nothing about, like, if you're a user experience designer, assume I know nothing about that and try to put it in terms that even I can understand. But that brings up a really interesting point too with like STAR as well. I think another tip is try not to talk for minutes on end, right? If you're in an interview and you're asked a question, the interviewer's job is to kind of elicit that information from you, and they will ask lots of really good follow-up questions. So don't feel like you need to explain, if you're interviewing with Amazon or anywhere, the entire story end to end with everything in one fell swoop, right? We like our interviews to feel more like this, right? More sort of conversational, back and forth, rather than, one mic and just like hold it there for minutes on end. It's like it should flow, hopefully. And we've recognized too, because to your point earlier, like you've been here 9 years now. That's a long time, but I'm sure you remember your interviewing experience with Amazon.
Oh yeah.
Right? And we all know that it is intimidating, and we've all. The nice thing is, I think, to remember is that every one of our candidates, as you're coming in to talk to us, just remember, like, we've all been there as well, right? And we remember what that's like, and remember that's not easy. And so I think, keeping that in, the further we get away from that, right? The longer you've been here, it can be harder to remember, but maybe as an interviewing team, we're reminding ourselves of that. We've been in that chair across the table before or across the other side of the lens. And that's really important, right? To have that compassion and to understand that the people that we're talking to are not professional interviewees, right? They do lots of different things, as do we, right? And so having a bit of grace and being understanding and knowing that, it's a conversation, right? And everything isn't going to go perfectly and smoothly every time. That's okay. We expect that. We are all human, and that's part of the fun of being human, right? Is little things that you kind of don't expect. So I like how you talked about the STAR method, and I like how it's really important to think about that. But again, it shouldn't be a long soliloquy, right? It should just be, hey, back and forth. Interviewer will ask lots of follow-up questions, look at examples, and so on and so forth. So that's the ideal interview in that situation, right?
And I think the one thing I hope that all candidates, I wish all candidates knew, is that when I'm sitting down at least to interview a candidate, I want them to get the job, right? I've set aside time to meet this person, and I really want them to get the job. And so I feel like that's an important thing for candidates to know is, we're inviting you to come in and to interview, whether it's with Amazon or another company, and we're rooting for you. We want you to get there.
Yeah, the best possible outcome in that scenario is the candidate gets the job, right? Because obviously the candidate hopefully will be very excited about the opportunity, and as a company, as Amazon, we get a great Amazonian that can go on to do amazing things, right?
So we have a lot of different roles available. What happens if, the first job that you come in for isn't a match? What should an applicant do?
Yeah, it's interesting, and not every job is going to be a match, right? And so it's a really interesting question. I would say that what we hire for is we try to hire for Amazon first, meaning we try to think, is this candidate a good fit for the company, right? That's the first and most important question to answer. Beyond that, then, there are a ton of different opportunities and teams like we've talked about. So even if that first opportunity doesn't necessarily pan out or work out the way that we initially thought, right, there are so many other opportunities. So, what we encourage is to don't let that stop you, right? Keep looking for other places, other opportunities that are interesting, and keep going forward, because you never know, just because it isn't a good fit for one role or location or team doesn't mean it's not a good fit for all, right? So that is really, really important to remember. And as we continue to grow as a company and offer more opportunities, that's only going to become even more true.
I think we have a lot of really good tips here, but there are two things that I want to make sure we touch upon. And one of them is just really bringing your whole self to the interview and bringing just authenticity. While it's very important to prepare and learn about Amazon, interviewing goes two ways. And so you're interviewing the company, you're interviewing Amazon as much as we're interviewing you, and just really showing up authentically, being really true about who you are, and then preparing questions that you really have to make sure that Amazon's the right fit for you is really important. Do you agree with that?
I totally agree, and I think to build on what you said, asking really good questions of your interviewers is such a great idea. I think not just to learn about the company, like you mentioned, but also to learn the perspective of the people that you're talking to, right? Just like you and I, we've been around for about the same amount of time, but we have very different experiences. And so this is like a great opportunity for for candidates to interview us and find out, hey, what do you like about it, right? What keeps you here? What challenges are there in your role, right? Where are the opportunities, do you think, for Amazon to improve? Like, ask the really tough questions, right? Because to your point, it should be a two-way interview. And we understand that in this job market, right, there are so many openings that chances are if they're talking to us, they're probably talking to a lot of other companies as well. And so it's incumbent on us to kind of give them a great experience, right, as candidates, and to ensure that, we give them the opportunity to talk to us and learn about us as well. So I love that call out. It's really great. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. Hopefully there were some great tips that you all gleaned from this session. And we wish you the best of luck in your interviewing with Amazon and your career beyond.